everybody, and welcome to this episode. You know, this channel is really dedicated to exploring and discovering the unseen dimensions. It's also about learning about our experience as a multidimensional being. And so in this episode, we're going to explore, do a deep dive, if you will, into the afterlife, which is another dimension that we all must go to at some time. Welcome to Creative Visions TV. I'm your host, Karen Dahlman, and today we have a talented medium joining us on the show all the way across the pond in the UK. Now, this person, this guest that we're going to welcome here today in a bit, has been on this show before. You may have remembered her when she came on with another author named Teresa Chung, and they talked about heavenly encounters. And if you missed that episode, by the way, the links will be below in the About This video section, so be sure to check that out as well. Now, this medium is super gifted. She's booked out 2 years in advance. It's crazy. Her work is so well known. And by the way, with her last book that came out where she talked about heavenly encounters, she immediately entered the ranks of best-selling author. So you can tell why I'm super excited to have her back again on our show. Now, I've got to also tell you guys this. We've been acquaintances and friends through social media and other kinds of groups. We both have the Ouija Board in common and spirit communication. But I had a chance last fall to meet her in person. And guess what? We hit it off famously. We shared dinner and friends and had great conversation, a lively evening. And it was so thrilling to finally meet her in person. And you know, it's like that relationship when you hook up with somebody and you go, we just gel. You feel it in your heart, you feel it in your soul, you feel it in your spirit. And that's what I consider. I consider her now a dear friend, a soul sister, if you will. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our UK guest today, all the way from across the pond, Claire Broad. Welcome, Claire. Welcome back to this show.
Hi, Karen. Hi, all your viewers. Thank you for having me.
You betcha. It's such a delight to have you and to see you again. And you guys, before we even turn this on, I should have been recording because we had said so many really cool things about her recent work. So I'm having her on because she has a new book that's coming out. It's going to be released next week, I believe it is. And it's all about the afterlife from a medium's perspective, but also, get this, you guys, the title is, What Are the Dead Dying to Tell Us? And I want to add this part to it. What are the dead dying to tell us about life? Claire?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? When the title actually, just to make that clear, it's what the dead are dying to teach us. And it's one of these things that was given to me by spirit. So I don't know about you, Karen, I'm sure you'll agree, but the spirit world, I've always found, have a great sense of humor. They don't take themselves too seriously or life, you know, they kind of see the bigger picture now, don't they? And I asked my spirit guides, you know, if you want me to write this book for you, what should I call it? And that title just went straight into my mind. And I just thought, oh, that's just so funny, you know, because it's almost like not making light of the fact that we die, that's serious business, right, but making light of something that sometimes I think we just take too intensely, and we don't lighten up about life, do we? It's about life. And I know for one, I can be quite intense anyway about life. And it's finding the joy of life and remembering that life is supposed to be enjoyed. So that's where the title came in.
I love that title. It's beautiful.
I mean, I like it. So I just sort of hope people get it.
I think they will. I think you guys will. You know, when you're speaking about this, death and life, and that's why I put those two together as well. It's really a continuum, isn't it? And you don't really ever leave living, do you?
No, there is only life. You know, there's dying, the dying body, but death to me is a redundant word. It's an illusion. And actually, that's one of the chapters in the book, is to actually get people to understand that life is a continuum. We don't understand what consciousness is, and that death is an illusion. It's something that it seems on one level, on the material level, to be a reality. And then we discover actually we don't know what the full reality, the ultimate reality is, and that there's more. And that there's, you know, a continual existence of the human soul after the death of the physical body. So it's an illusion.
So as a medium, you really strive to find evidence of this afterlife. And you've done that quite a bit in your work, haven't you?
I have. Well, I mean, I do admire mediums that can, have an experience of spirit, see an apparition or hear a voice, and just absolutely from that moment on, just say, that's it. I understand it all. There's life after death, and I don't need any more. I don't need to understand anymore. My own experience is enough. Whereas I am not like that. I've got a very analytical brain that makes me want to just chew it all over all of the time. So I do know that I have had these experiences. They're very real, but have I understood them right? That's where I'm always coming at it. So the evidence of survival is really important to me, because I need to go beyond faith into knowing. And so striving to find information that will help me to trust the evidence, that it will prove itself, if you like, is really important to me, because we can't scientifically prove it.
Right.
And I know, because I have met with so many scientists now in the process through mediumship, because I really needed to understand, if I'm saying this to people, am I understanding them and understanding it the best that I can? Does science have knowledge that I don't have? And have I got this wrong? It turns out, no, the scientists are saying to me, the universe is multidimensional. We don't understand what consciousness is, and that there is potential for something else. They're not necessarily buying into it being a spirit world, but some kind of reality continuum. They're open to it. The scientists on the leading edge, on the fringe, are open to it. And that's what's exciting to me. So yes, the evidence of survival. And also, I should say that I was trained as a medium through, in the UK, the Spiritualist National Union, which in the UK is a registered religion, actually, in the UK. And so you have to work to get to a certain standard in your mediumship. And then I became accredited. So somebody else watched me work, validated the standard of my work and the conduct, and then said, yes, this lady's doing what she says she's doing, rather than me just setting up shop and saying it. So it has always been very important to me to, no one can actually say beyond all reasonable doubt, absolutely, completely, I can prove an afterlife. Even mediums, what we can say is we can give you an experience that provides evidence for, and then you make your own mind up. And I believe that's where we're at. And I do doubt whether science will ever get beyond that. I hope they do. So in the book, actually, I'm presenting a lot of scientists' voices. I talk about the science, not writing about the science, because I appreciate my audience, probably get lost in that. But just saying, this is, I believe this because I've had this experience, and this is the research that's available around that. I think that's the rounded presentation of it then, and then people can make their own minds up, can't they?
Yes, they can. And you do bring up some great research in there. And there's one aspect of the research is about the genetic component, quite possibly related to mediumship. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So
in the first
chapter, it is really exciting. In the first chapter of the book, I touch a little bit on consciousness. What is consciousness? How does it sort of function through the human body? And how can we become more aware of the spiritual aspect of ourselves? So I talk about the brain, how the brain functions, the interesting research that's behind that actually as well with regards to mediumship. And then I talk about the fact that many people have had spiritual experiences and spontaneous after-death communication. Often you find that it follows in the family. So for myself, I gave my first message when I was 4 to my nan, and it turns out that she paid attention because she'd never classed herself as a medium, but she'd also seen spirit. And then we discovered that my great-grandmother had also been known for being able to see the deceased. So I began to realize, I wonder if there's something genetic in this as well. The brain obviously works in a certain way. And if that's true, am I more predisposed to that because my genes in some way have made it more possible for me to use my brain as an antenna in this way? So Dr. Helen Warbe at the Institute of Noetic Sciences I heard about the research that she was doing. She'd been in contact with me a couple of years ago now asking me if I wanted to take part in some research that she was doing. And she's looking into the genetics of psychic ability and seeing, she's looking into, are people predisposed to this? And she gave me some lovely words in the book about the fact that even scientists who are very logical and need evidence and want to follow the data, oftentimes their discoveries are kind of through a collective consciousness or the unconsciousness. The answer comes in a dream, or two scientists at the same time suddenly come up with inspiration across the globe at the same time with the same results. There is, even in science, that acknowledgement that there is that extrasensory perception part playing in the discovery of scientific ideas. So her research is fascinating. She hasn't finished yet. The results aren't able to be shared, but she's even taken saliva samples from several people that are psychic or working mediums, and she's studying to see, are they more predisposed genetically to the everyday person or not? So I can't wait to find that.
Oh, I look forward to hearing more about that. And wow, you're going to have to probably do some work with her in the future. More
we'll
work.
Have to see. They do great work there at ION.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah,
you guys know the Noetic Sciences group, and I'll put the links below to that as well. But there's such fascinating work coming out of that. There's other research that's going on too. You want to talk about anything else that you can share with us, maybe from your book?
Sure. Well, actually, if I bring it over to the UK, because America are doing lots, but there's also quite a fair bit amount of research going on in the UK. So we just touched on the fact, didn't we, that, I'm quite keen to understand what evidence of survival is with regards to mediumship, and make sure that in my practice I'm providing some evidence for. Well, in the UK at the University of Northampton, Professor Chris Rowe, who's also president of the Society for Psychical Research, he has a lab set up at the Arthur Finney College, which is the college associated with the Spiritualist National Union. And he is working with mediums there to scientifically study them, basically, and see, if they are actually coming up with evidence if it's not just cold reading and Barnum's statements, and how he can work with them to, basically he says that people have these mystical experiences. It's no good that science just dismisses them. We need to understand human potential and look into this, because we don't have all the answers. So why not? I love that approach. And I also love about Professor Chris Rowe is that he offered this in my book. He shares that actually many people who have psychic experiences are quite frightened to share them with other people, because in our culture we just dismiss it as nonsense, because they're worried that they'll be perceived as crazy, or, hearing voices, actually having mental issues. But he found in his research, actually, that the mediums that he's worked with are more content, grounded, secure, happy, more mentally well than even his psychology students are. So it doesn't follow that having a spiritual experience, seeing an apparition, hearing voices, knowing that, believing that spirit around you means that you're crazy. You're not. And so many of us have these experiences, it doesn't mean we're crazy. So really important messages, I think,
It really is. And so he's not marginalizing somebody when they have these experiences. And I think that's why a lot of people, and myself included for years, didn't want to talk about some of these experiences. And still, I know you guys out there write to me too. And it's like, you're not really sure if you want to come public and share them, especially when it comes to using the Ouija board to communicate, you guys. That's typically marginalized and poo-pooed as well. So, speaking about the Ouija board or talking board, I know Claire too from some of her channeling work with that tool. Do you want to share any of that with us, Claire?
Sure. I mean, I was one of these people that I share this story in the book as well, actually, that when I was younger, there's no coincidences in life. I know that I was supposed to be doing this work now when I look back, because when I used to go to school age, when I was in school, my mum got a part-time job around the school day, and it just so happened that it was for an organisation known as the National Federation of Spiritual Healers. That's known as Healing UK in the UK now. But at the time, she was working in their office because it was just in our local village. It puts her in touch with many mediums and healers used to come in and out through the day. And one day a lady said to her, don't let Claire get involved with the Ouija board. There's a Ouija board at her school. I know. I've got her granddad here. He's saying she's sensitive. She mustn't get involved in this. She's too young. So actually what that did, because actually what I found out when my mum got home and told me this, what she didn't know was that I had actually been at school that day with my friends bringing in a Ouija board. So just the whole fact that my granddad knew that and that he'd mentioned it, it put shivers through me. I just thought, what's wrong with this thing? Mustn't I, obviously mustn't go near it. So I didn't touch it for 30 years. Even when I was developing my mediumship, I just thought, oh, it must be slow and laborious. And why do we need to spell out and everything? And I won't tell the whole story now, but in the chapter, I describe how the Ouija board actually found its way to me.
Yes.
And that my spirit guides, as a mature woman who is trained in spiritual matters as a practitioner, obviously said, okay, now's the time. We need you to learn this tool, because they obviously had an awareness that I was going to write for them and that this would help me to develop my channeling between them and myself in writing. So the board literally turned up on my doorstep through a friend who said, I've seen your spirit guide. They're showing me this, and I believe you're supposed to be gifted this. And there was this beautiful board all wrapped up for me with white feathers on it. And my guide goes by the name of White Feather. And so I realized I've got to start using this board. Her and I sat down very frightened. And it was your videos that really gave me the confidence to just approach this, even after all those years. After all those years, it was you that made me feel safe to explore that tool.
That's
because
great.
Again,
that's great.
And I think, Karen, we carry stigmas and not even realize we do, don't we? Because,
so true.
I'd been learning mediumship now for like 15, 18 years, something like that by that point. And I was carrying the stigma of the Ouija thinking, I don't need that. I can do it myself. What do I need that for? But actually, it turns out it was a really helpful tool that developed my own clairaudience better. I began to hear spirit as the words were spelling out. It helped me. So now I'm open, and the message that I got through the board was so loving, inspirational, philosophical. And I must say, for a long time, because I was here, I think I communicated with you, didn't I? Saying I'm hearing at the same time. It's just me moving this. And for a long time, I doubted it until, and I write about this one day when it spelt out in Lakota my spirit guide's name. And that's when I thought, okay, if it's coming through my mind and if I'm moving it through ideomotor response through my own involuntary muscles, fine. That's not the interesting part. The interesting part is I got information beyond my normal knowledge.
You guys, she got a real Lakota word, and it's in her book, and the story goes, it's flushed out even more, so it's a really cool story. And they looked the word up, and sure enough, it was a legitimate word. It was the name of your guide, right, in Lakota.
That's right.
And she doesn't know Lakota. She doesn't know Native American, really, and she has a Native American guide, you guys. She's in the UK. She has a guide from here, the North America. So I think that's really cool. And I think that's around the time you and I became friends, and you started talking to me about the board, and you saw some of the videos. You guys, and I want to reiterate what Claire just said. A lot of you guys ask me about this. You will often develop these other abilities of yourself. I talk about the byproduct of using these tools, and that can be your clairaudience. It can be hearing the words as you're getting them, and don't discount those. Allow it to spell, but write those words down too. I know Claire the Guides did a video with us one time, and they did talk about that. Maybe that was a private one, but I remember talking about it with the group here, is that if you do get words, write those down in addition to what you're spelling, because it's all going to go together, and you're really just, again, a multidimensional being accessing all these different modalities within yourself to navigate the unseen dimensions. This is what we're talking about here. So I love that story. And you're saying, you're not saying the Ouija board's bad. You're saying when you were young, it probably wasn't right for you at that time. But
no, that's right.
Okay.
I think with all spirit communication, in fairness, I do believe that probably when you're young and inexperienced and don't know what you're doing and perhaps haven't quite come into your own power yet, then okay, you might bump up against some experiences that frighten you from really it's from ignorance. But once you've trained and you've understood it and you've learned, you've had enough experiences, and you really do realize that the intention with which you work,
yes,
and the your own healthy mental well-being dictates that you will work without fear or the need to worry, because you'll be attracting like attracts like. And I've never had a terrible experience through spirit communication. I'm more frightened of the living, to be honest.
Me too, Claire.
Yay.
And rightfully so. You know, it's no different when you work on the board, or you do this communication or channeling or mediumship or psychic work. You're taking in the energy, and you really got to put yourself in that right space to do it. We talk about that a lot on this show. We do have a lot of younger viewers as well, and I want you guys who are just new at using this tool, whether young or even older using this tool, to really think about that. Get in the right space of your mind, your mental set, your heart set. We talk about how to do that. And Claire, would you talk a little bit about your sensitivities that people have as a child and also as an adult, how this relates to working, as we're talking right now, just how your intentions are, but how your sensitivities, that a lot of people that do this work quite readily and easily tend to be more sensitive.
That's right. I mean, in fact, this is in the book. I talk about the fact that as children, we often have these experiences with spirit. Mm-hmm. So for me, yes, I gave my first message at the age of 4, but, you know, that didn't define me as a medium. I had a very normal life. I didn't consider myself somebody who could communicate with the dead, you know. But so really what was going on was a lot of psychic experiences, ESP, premonitions, communication through dreams, out-of-body experiences. I think many of us have all this, and we don't realize we're having it because as children, you can chalk it up to your imagination. Yeah. And because the brain is working differently in those years. And so many children have experiences with spirit, and it's natural, and doesn't need to be feared. And in fact, I found that as I moved into my teenage years, it was the spirit world who came to me then. So spirit guides started showing themselves to me in my teens. And I believe that's because before I could be so entrenched in this world and in the system and the way of thinking that we adopt, that the spirit world could come when I'm open. Because the great thing about teenagers, of course, is they are more open to experience, open-minded, willing to explore, experiment, do new things. And so they kind of seem to me, it seems, come in at that time when, right, this is the time now to show Claire some things that are going to pique her interest and, you know, get her excited about the fact there's more. So I would say that as a spiritual being ourselves, which we are, there are optimal stages all through life to be working with the spirit world. And that I really hope I can get across to people through the book that as adults, we don't then dismiss the experiences of the young, you know, because actually they're very valuable and can then go on to really assist that person as an adult and help them feel content and help them to fulfill their life and their full potential, actually. I believe that as humans, I don't know how you feel, Karen, but I feel that we're moving into a new wave of awareness, and that more and more of us will become more in tune or more accepting of our psychical faculties, because, you know, it'll be okay to. And it's just part of our makeup, and that it gets suppressed and hidden away. So the whole of what the dead are dying to teach us is not about me. It's not an autobiography. It's not trying to, I'm sharing lots of my own personal stories to make sense of the teachings, but the teachings in themselves, the 7 lessons that I give throughout the book, the core lessons that I take from my work with spirit, is all about empowering others to understand you can do this too. It isn't, I'm not special. You know, I didn't call myself a medium. Other people labeled me that. And I think many of us don't realize that we're having psychic experiences and that they're natural, normal and fine, and that we can actually develop them. and encourage them.
Very well said. And you guys, Claire is also a mother. And how do you work with your own children? Like, do you have any examples of how people can work with the children to encourage and to help them develop and explore this? By the way, this is Bear, my cat. You might both see him here. He loves when we talk about this stuff, and he talks to me on the Ouija board. And you guys, he named himself on the Ouija board Bear. But anyway, so what would you say to parents and even children out there who are having these experiences, and parents that are raising children, how to work with their children when they start telling them, hey, I'm seeing so-and-so in my room. She has some brilliant examples in the book of the different beings that come to people when they're younger too. But what would you say?
Sure, but throughout the book, actually, what I've included are what are called some call to actions, because, it's not just about reading a book, having a nice icy bun, putting it down, and then it's the whole book's about trying to affect some change, to switch a light on in people, and part of that is to realize that knowledge in itself isn't enough. We have to put the knowledge into action. Mm-hmm. So I include some calls to action, tips as to how you can expand your own awareness. And part of that is with the children. So I share a story in there about with my own children, how in order to teach them to meditate, children can't sit still for long. Right. They get bored, they get fidgety, especially
some adults do too, you guys. So
exactly. Right? We have, and especially this day and age with technology, our brains are actually changing, and we can't focus for too long. So with them, what I used to do is do a visualization. I'd get them to start telling me a story. They'd give me a few lines. Then I'd offer up a few lines as a continuum, and then they would offer a few more. And before they realized it, we were together creating a story and visualizing together. And it was keeping them in the moment. It was keeping them present with me. We were bonding, but being creative. It gave them permission to just explore and go with their minds in wherever it was going to go. And I found that really useful then in their own development of using their own intuition, gut feelings, learning to go with things because they weren't suppressed.
And I got to say something about the imagination. We don't give it enough credit. You guys, the imagination, it's the imaginal realm is where all of creation starts. And it's where you do your readings and you get to know the psychic. He wants to get into my little beads here. And you get to you get to do your readings from that space. When I channel directly the guides, they come to me through the fodder, the avenue of my imagination where I can sense them, feel them, and then the words and thoughts come through. But it's checking it. It's like clicking into it in a way, entering that. So I think what you're saying is brilliant when you talk about working with the imagination and stories and being aware and present. And when you meditate too, you often will go into that space. And that's also the place where your dreams come from. So really do everything you can to support your imagination, your visualization, your creative. This is where I think your creative spark comes from. So I love that you really touch on that and explain that in the book.
And make it okay, because I think many of us worry when we're developing with mediumship or psychic ability. I know, having trained so many people, one of the things that most people say, which is so common, is, am I making this all up?
Right. How do you get past that? That's a great, topic right there to talk about, because that's what we all say. Especially when you use the Ouija board by yourself, people say, I'm making this up. And I remember when I first started voice channeling, I said, come on, I'm making this up. But no, exactly. You start getting, like, you got the Lakota words, but what do you say to that?
Well, I say what my teacher said to me, actually, because, I used to say to her, I just feel like I'm making it all up. And she used to say, congratulations, you are. Because what she understood was that through the visualization, through the journey of the mind, those in spirit could join me there. It's through our imaginations, our pictures, through the mind, that spirit communication works. So, it doesn't, at first it feels like you're making it all up, and you kind of have to just go with the first thing in your mind, not overthink things, just get beyond the worry and the fear and the ego, actually, of I'm going to get this wrong and I'm going to look silly. Mm-hmm. Just give it. And what I love, and I'll share this in the book, is in practices like shamanism and in, tribal practices right across the world and across time, the spirit dimension of life, psyche, consciousness, whatever word you want to use, is accepted. And so they journey and, they visualize, and that's real to them, because if the mind is producing it, then it's part of reality. It's real. And Aborigines talking about dream time. You know, we have limited what reality is in the Western world, I believe. We've become to limit, this is what reality is, when we don't know what reality is. And actually, who's to say that your dreams aren't just as much a real part of reality as your waking state? So it's breaking down the boundaries and making people realize that, you know, you've been given that tool for a reason. It taps you into the ultimate reality. As you were saying, I tend to call it the collective consciousness.
Yes.
You know, universal mind, whatever you want to call it. It's that aspect of you that can't ever be cut off, actually, from that wider dimension, from those that you love, because it's our minds that blend and are part of that pool of awareness. A bit like a cloud, I suppose, isn't it? But, you know, if you want to talk in technology terms, it's like the cloud. It's all there. It's all stored there. You can go to
upload and download, you guys. That's really...
Absolutely, yeah.
I think it's a good analogy to explain it. When you... By the way, a lot of you guys ask me about working with your third eye. That's something that's really dear to my heart. And one of the things I've learned just from my teachers in spirit that have taught me about the third eye is that you got to go into the imagination and make that connection between your mind, your mental, what you're creating, your visualizations with your heart. And that connection between the two opens up that pineal gland. I'll be talking more about that on another show, but I wanted to get Claire's take on this because she touches on this. This all reaches back into the idea of awareness and consciousness. The other thing I wanted to mention was when you were talking about how a lot of these wonderful inventions and creations have happened through the dream time, through the dreamscape, and come up with all these ideas. And it's like we all are tapping into these ideas simultaneously around the world. It's like we'll call it the law of critical mass. Or you can call it, you've heard about that, right? Or the Kinke's theory of the monkeys who were cleaning their coconuts on these islands. And after enough monkeys on one island did it, all the monkeys on another island far away that couldn't even get to each other started doing it. It's like that law of critical mass. Enough of that species have done something or come up with some idea that all of a sudden now it's a regular occurrence or a regular concept. And so back to what you were saying, Claire, I just so agree. We are awakening to these abilities because enough of us are accessing. So it becomes more normal, although I hate that word, but it becomes more typical of the human experience.
Oh, that's beautifully put. And I believe we're also understanding much more about how meditation in itself is actually opening us up to this, because of course you talk about the pineal gland, but we know when we meditate that when we close our eyes actually or sit in a dark space that serotonin is released and that the pineal gland becomes stimulated and it releases DMT, also known as the spirit molecule. So the good news is you haven't got to go and get high. You know, you can meditate.
True.
And float, because DMT is a natural chemical in the body. The more you do it, the more you can produce and the more you can open your awareness just through getting still, using the imagination to stimulate the mind, the brain, the pineal gland. And we haven't yet fully understood our full potential. Not even this much, you know. This is what I understand from the spirit people that come back to me. You know, as they bring their messages, they make me realize we understand so little, and they're trying to give us information in a very simplistic manner to help us know there is more. You can't die. You're never alone. Death is an illusion. You are a spirit being. You need to understand who you truly are. And when that happens, you can live to your full potential without fear and embrace life. And so this is what I'm encapsulating in the whole book, I hope.
And you are, because I had an opportunity to read the book already before it's released, so I was thrilled to read that it's an honor actually to read it, and I think you did capture that very well, and it makes you want to continue thinking for yourself and to go explore even further. And I think one of the main things about this work, I know that I do, and I know that Claire does, and a few others that I've spoken to as well, is really about empowering the individual. Empowering the individual to know more about themselves and their experiences within the world at large, or within the universe for that matter, and that we don't know enough. All we can do is just get out there and keep exploring, but there's definitely some great tools that you give in there the takeaways to do that. I'm wondering, where does all this fit in with religion? Does this scare people, or does it excite people who may have more of maybe a Christian or some kind of religious background that's more devout or strict to not doing such mediumship or psychic abilities?
Sure. And such a key point, actually, because one of the chapters I've dedicated is called Rising Above Fear. And that's not to be trite. I think that, and you'll know this better than anyone, that, talking about talking boards and Ouija boards, people come to their own exploration of spirit with so much fear. They fear about opening the doorway between themselves and a dimension they don't understand. They fear about the fact that, they have been brought up through conventional or more orthodox faiths. And are they being a bad Christian, for instance, or Catholic because, they're wanting the proof. They want the evidence. I don't believe it seems to me these days, because science has really changed the way we look at things, it's no longer just about having faith and religion. We've got science that says we can have a process here that helps us to know best we can, that even people of faith still, when their loved one dies, are looking for that proof, that evidence for themselves. Yeah. And I often get letters saying to me along the lines of, I'm a bad Christian, I must be, but I'm reaching out to you because it's not, faith alone is not working for me. I want to try and experience for myself, my loved one around me. Or actually, quite often, they've had spontaneous after-death communication, because actually the research shows that in the first 3 to 6 months, your loved ones are much more likely to come to you direct. And then they're worrying, they haven't crossed properly, are they stuck in limbo? All these things come up.
Yeah.
So in the book, I try and address the fact that mediumship or spirit communication or just evidence of survival does not have to conflict at all with your faith. And that actually, and I take on some of these, bravely, I think, take on some of the fact that, Jesus himself was doing spirit communication, was meditating. Jesus said, take no thought. He didn't say, don't worry. At the end of the day, we're going to worry, aren't we? When you can't pay your bills and, this, that, and the other, it's all going on around you. It's ridiculous to say, don't worry about anything. He said, take no thought. To me, that is moving into the present moment.
Yeah.
Still in the mind. And, and actually I cite in the book about passages that there are in the Bible that I came across that show that Jesus was, at one particular time, I found it fascinating. It's called the Transfiguration. And as a medium, I find that amazing anyway, because in mediumship we have transfiguration.
Please explain that term, Claire, if you would, transfiguration.
Sure. So transfiguration is when the spirit world come close to a medium who is able to, if you like, blend so closely with the energy of a spirit being that spirit being can build. It's like a mask of energy over the face of the medium and then imprint themselves in it. So they kind of superimpose over the face of the medium and you can actually see and recognize them.
Yeah.
So I've experienced this once in my life, and not through my own mediumship, through another medium. And what's so interesting to me is when I saw the medium, I was called up to the front and this white light was everywhere, yet we were sitting in pitch black. And fast forwarding here, but my spirit guides led me to the Bible to look at the teachings of Jesus, because I'd actually decided that I was atheist or agnostic and I didn't want anything to do with it. And they were bringing me channeling and through the board, pointing me to teachings, saying things from all the ancient spiritual scriptures, not just Christianity. And I was brought to this passage on the Transfiguration, where Jesus goes into a tabernacle, which is a tent, and it says that his raiment became white. So he was absolutely covered in white light, and he was talking to Moses and to Elijah. Now, I think it's like Moses died something like 1,500 years before.
Way before. Right.
Yeah. So, if Jesus is talking to Moses and Elijah about 500 years before, then they're dead. So he's no way talking to them whilst they're here. And so there's many passages like that. And I then found out afterwards that there's even more evidence in the Gnostic text that Jesus was teaching his disciples mediumship. We know he was. He was teaching them energy healing. He was teaching them how to heal. He was teaching them how to, cleanse spirit and release demons, whatever you want to call it. That his disciples were everyday people, and he was teaching them. So I kind of just put it to those people that are in conflict.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? You're not bad for wanting to seek some answers, and it doesn't have to conflict with your faith. The evidence is there that it has existed through faith through all time. I share in the Gnostic Gospels the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, an absolutely astonishing passage that I found about mental mediumship there, with her seeing a vision of Jesus and what he was saying to her. And of course, this has all been squashed and kept to one side. But if people realise that it is part of their faith, it doesn't have to conflict with it. Yeah. I think that's a key message, because nowhere does it actually say in the Bible that you shouldn't see a medium, that you shouldn't, embrace the fact that there is life after death. That's the core message of it all, isn't it? So,
and Jesus' stories that he showed that there was this raising up from the dead into a spiritual body. So I know they use different words that we might use, but that's the transition from leaving this incarnation or corporeal existence and moving into more of your spiritual light body, which is what we were before we came here and where we go afterwards. At least what I've been told from the spirit guides and the beings I work with. Now, we're talking a lot about people. What about the animals? What? Yeah, let's talk about that, because, this channel, we talk a lot about animal communication on the board or off the board, but also even talking to animals like my cat Bear, who is very much alive and talked to me through a Ouija board. But there's an element of consciousness here. So do the animals, in your opinion and what you've experienced, continue on as well?
Oh my God, 100% they do.
I think so too, you guys. Well, for me, I know so, but where I am, that's how I feel in my life. But everybody has their own path to whatever they want to explore. But yes, so let's talk about that. What has been your experience about the animals?
Well, to me, animals are conscious beings.
Yes.
They're consciousness, and this is what it comes down to. I try and interchange through the book the word spirit with psyche, consciousness, awareness, because this is really what we're dealing with, and they're conscious beings. So their energy, their consciousness, their awareness, they can't be destroyed either. So in my personal experience, life is a continuum. It's a continuum for the animals as it is as much as we are animals. Why would we think that we are so...
We just happen to be mammal animals, but they're mammal animals too, like my cat sitting here. So yeah, exactly. They're animals, right.
So why would it be any different for them? It isn't. And I have seen many times in messages with clients, loved ones bringing in much loved pets and allowing me to see those animals there with them being looked after. It sounds trite, but where there's love, there's always love, and those animals are being cared for and loved for by your loved ones in the spirit dimension. Why not? I mean, so, and not only that, it seems to be that animals make brilliant guides. Because when you think about the loyalty of a dog, for instance, just on that scale, and the love that it shows, oftentimes those in spirit, those animals want to come and give us that. They come and bring that loyalty and that protection from the spirit side of life in a way that humans don't seem to provide that unconditional love.
Right.
So and many teachings, I don't write about it in this book, but in Answers from Heaven, I cover how I saw how I was given an otter as my spirit what they call power animal.
I think what you said, you guys, is otter. Okay.
Otter. Oh,
right.
Sorry.
It sounds a little different. And for all the English people, the British people, they're going to understand what you said. But I heard it. But I know her book. It's otter.
Otter. I love that.
It almost sounded like you said altar. And I'm thinking, well, we're not talking about altars right now. But yeah. So, okay. Just the little translation, guys.
The otter. Like Taka the otter. I don't know if you guys had that. No? Okay. So
I don't think so.
Right. So, but otter, as it turns out, as a power animal or
Yes.
spirit guide, is known for being playful and enjoying life. And, you know, if you watch otters and the way that they work, they're very playful, you know. And I was being given that animal as a medicine, as a counteractive measure to my own personality, my own spirit, because at the time I was being so intense about life. I was in my 20s and I was really intense and worrying for all the issues in the world and just seeing everything seemed so serious. And so Spirit gave me otter and told me basically to lighten up.
Play.
To remember to play. Yeah, absolutely. That through play we learn. And as adults, we often forget that. We often forget to do that. So animals absolutely can bring us messages and understanding that humans can't give us quite as well, I believe.
Well, and Claire, I also think too, what I've learned from the animals, and especially my cat that passed a year ago, transitioned a year ago, he still comes back and communicates with us. And he's this master teacher, master healer. I think all of our animals are that because they are unconditional. When they're in our lives in this dimension and also when they're in the other dimension, they're still our master teachers and healers.
Absolutely. And of course, their brains, if you like, whilst they're incarnate, are working in a completely different way.
Yeah.
You know, we have a dog in our family that we had an expert come in to help us to make sure that we could bring him up as well as we could. And the behavioural expert, the animal behavioural expert, said to us, animals work with energy. They don't listen to your command first. They read your energy first. And amazing. I just thought that was just amazing, isn't it? That animals are not communicating in the same way. And we have to get onto their level and recognize that as soon as we come into the room, they've read our energy well before we give a command or say a word. So, you know, they are in some ways way ahead of us. We've kind of got shut off to that. Mm-hmm. And actually, I use that analogy. When people say to me, how do you know mediumship is real if you can't scientifically prove it? For me, I say to people, I know it's subjective. I'm going through an experience that I can't give to you. And the only way that I can say to you that I know it's real is just like when you walk into a room and two people have been arguing and you walk into that atmosphere, you have a physiological response. No one is going to tell you that atmosphere is not there. You know it's there.
Yeah, right.
And if you said to a scientist, there's the atmosphere now, let's measure it, there'd be no hope of doing that. But you know that atmosphere is there. And it's the same for me and the dimension of spirit. I just know it's there. But I can't allow someone else to know it's there unless they're also able to be in tune with that energy that's around at that time. Or for whatever reason, my body's become sensitive to being able to perceiving it.
Your body becomes a tool, actually. It becomes a device. I always laugh and say, I'm like a walking Ouija board now. You know, you start tapping into the messages and they just come. And that's part of what we're talking about when you start developing these abilities or even working with sometimes these tools, but your own abilities start to come out. Claire, what would you say is probably the biggest takeaway from your book? I mean, I don't want her to give the book away, but there's so much juicy stuff in there. But would you say Spirit really wants us to know, or in your terms, the dead really want to tell us? What is that?
Yeah, I think it really is that we are much more than we understand ourselves to be. And that when we appreciate that, if we can kind of even just begin to understand the awesomeness of our makeup, then we can release fear and we can live a life more fully and more contently, because we are no longer scared of death. And the last chapter of the book is all about the fact that no one dies alone. And I find that many people in life generally, their lives are curtailed through the fear of death, through the fear of dying alone or being alone, or being, not able to control the fact that sometimes you feel like you're on this conveyor belt, don't you, going towards, an ultimate outcome that's going to come, and you're trying to, backpedal and you can't, So to make the most of life, I'm really feeling the takeaway from this book is that you are much more than you realize. You are never alone. You cannot be alone. You cannot die alone. And therefore you can live free of fear and live your best life because of it. That's what I don't know how you feel, Karen, but working with spirit has made my life happy. I feel a contentment and a peace that other people may not have because they don't have that understanding that there's more. So that's what I think the biggest takeaway is.
I would agree with that, just reading your book, but also what I feel as well, working with spirit, working with what I call the guides or source wisdom has just catapulted me into some incredible spaces of exploration that I never would have thought would have existed. And it gave me a way to look back through my life and see all those connective dots of how I was already accessing spirit. So now when I can talk to you guys in the show or write or teach, I can also help people find that within themselves and not have to reinvent the wheel. And that's what I like about your book too, Claire, and the other book you did as well, and talking to you, because you're helping us see these dots connected in our own life to realize that we really are empowered beings that come with a purpose and a connectivity to all else that exists. And it's through those connections we don't fully understand how it works, but yet we relate. And we relate to people, we can feel the energies, we know the work we're doing, whether it's mediumship or psychic abilities or empath or being intuitive, we start to feel it. And you just can't necessarily put your finger on it all the time, and you can't always measure it with science, but yet you begin to feel it. It becomes a knowing. And that's what I think your book speaks to too, how to get there, how to connect those dots.
Absolutely, because I think I will feel like I've done my job. The reason and the purpose for me being here will be if I can help people to understand you don't need a medium to have this knowledge. Well, the day I'm not needed, because people are able to expand their own minds, get still, accept that reality of spirit around them for themselves, will be a happy day for me.
So let's put Claire out of business, guys.
Absolutely. I don't know if you feel the same, but that's a good teacher. A teacher is somebody who can give you the tools so that you don't need them anymore.
You don't need them. You can learn to do it yourself. That is one of the biggest message of this channel, you guys, and I'm glad that Claire feels that way too. It's definitely apparent in her books. Well, we've come to the part of the show where we're going to close here really soon. Any final words you'd like the subscribers, the audience here to know, in addition to where else they can find you and what's coming up for you?
Okay, lovely. Well, the book, I hope, is what I really want people to take away from it. I hope it's just an easy read in easy chunks that you can pick up, put down, come back to in your busy lives. You can go back away from, it's not a heavy read, but it is thought provoking. So stick with it. If it touches any, parts where you feel like, oh, that makes me feel uncomfortable, it's encouraging you to think. So that's what it's about for me. Thinking. It's a thinking book.
It is. It, like you said, you could read it and then put it down and come back to it, which is what I did. And I was reading it on the plane, reading it here, reading it there, reading it at night. And you don't miss anything because you come right back to it and pick right up where you were. And it does make you think further, which I like.
Yeah, so if you are thinking after you've read the book, then come and engage with me. Ask me questions, find me on Facebook. YouTube will be doing more on, and I love that kind of chewing over the fat together, because that's how we learn. I have a community on Facebook it's just a lovely community, come together, and we may not always agree, but it's always done with love and respect, and nobody's opinion is belittled or thought of as stupid. We're all exploring, questioning, asking whatever those questions may be together. So once you've read the book and you're thinking, there is a place to go afterwards to ask questions. That's fine. And as to coming to see me work, well, as you say, my private practice is 2 years in advance booked, but I do many public demonstrations. Yes. I'm also going to be doing many more talks, actually, because I want to get the wisdom of spirit out there to help people live their best lives. So I'm so excited. In October, I'm actually going to Avebury in the UK near Stonehenge.
You guys, crop circles galore.
Absolutely. The energy there is going to be amazing just from that, I think, to do a talk there in Avebury at Halloween. But I'm also going to be at Alexandra Palace in London. I'm going to be at Watkins Bookstore, which is the world's only esoteric bookstore, 100 years old. beautiful place.
You guys, I visited when I went to the UK when I saw Claire too, and I went there and I found their book on the shelf. Do you remember that? I took a picture and I sent it to you guys.
That was amazing. Isn't that bookstore
Oh
amazing?
my God, you can get lost. We were in there for I got a few hours, I think, and then we had to get on our way, but we had such a great time in there. It's epitome of this really old, esoteric, cool library. Bookstore, though. It's a bookstore.
I'm convinced J.K. Rowling must have gone there for ideas about Diagon Alley. I mean, that just to me is, Harry Potter all over that bookstore. So I'm going to be around. I've got loads of events going on. You can find them on my website, which is www.clairebroad.com. So come and engage with me, find out where I am. And I just really hope people enjoy this book and can see that it's something that they can apply in their own lives. This is not a story about my life. This is about their life, and that we're all one. We're all one.
As we're all connected. Okay, so the book comes out September 10th, if I understand correctly?
That's right, yes.
And right now it's pre-sales. They can go on Amazon.com and pre-buy it, right?
That's it. It's there for you. So give me some reviews, give me some feedback. I want to hear from everybody. And I just want to thank you so much, Karen, for giving me this opportunity to share my work, because I didn't choose to write books. The spirit world told me that's what they wanted me to do. And I feel that you're giving me that ability to fulfill the mission they sent me on. So it means so much from my heart. Thank you.
Well, fantastic. Listen, it was a pleasure having you on again. Welcome back. You're a wonderful guest. And you know what, you guys, she's going to be writing more books. I keep getting messages about that. I even told her she'd be a best-selling author and she was going to write another book. And here we are.
Wow.
I know.
You did say that. You are on the money.
I did say that. And she writes well. So thank you again so much, Claire, for coming on the show. We really enjoy having you as our guest.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
You're very welcome. So there you have it, you guys. Here's Claire coming back to us from before. She wrote about heavenly encounters, and now she's talking more about just the afterlife and how you can even begin to access it yourself and to let you know that you're never alone. That's key, and that love never dies. So get out there, read her book, explore for yourself, connect with her, and know that you are an awesome spirit being yourself, incarnate in form right now. From whence you came, you will go back again. Thank you so much for joining me and joining Claire. This is Creative Visions TV. I'm Karen Dahlman. And until next time, get out there and explore the multidimensionality of yourself. Bye-bye.